Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. By the way, the title, unbelievably, because I got one of those by mistake originally, it just says on the spine, the Constitution of the United States of America, Centennial Edition. And that's actually really important because I hear people say all the time, well, Mark, why do we need to amend the Constitution? I mean, after all, this document is beautiful, succinct. It says what we know it says. We all understand what it says. Why do we need to amend it? And the answer is because this is not the Constitution under which we live. The federal government deems that to be the United States Constitution. You call the government publishing office today. You could order one. When I did it, it was about $130. It's a little bit ironic. Today they say they don't have the money to publish those anymore, so you can't order those from the federal government anymore. Yeah, and that wasn't in the $1 trillion bill that they just passed. I want to back up a little bit, and again, thank you for letting me be here. It's an honor to be with you guys. In my opinion, having traveled all over the country, been in 48 states, been in the legislatures in most of those, this is where America actually works. When you look at Washington, D.C. and what goes on, when we watch television, whatever media outlet you happen to watch, what we see is the brokenness and the dysfunction of the United States of America. I have the honor and privilege of traveling around and testifying in state legislatures all over the country, and thank God for you, for men and women like you that are willing to serve and do what the founders intended us to do. And one of the things that they intended us to do, and you to do specifically, was to stand in the breach when the federal government got out of control. Regardless of which party we're a member of, the statistics are astounding. 72% of all Americans feel that the federal government is too big and does too much. It's just involved in too much of our business. We might have partisan differences about what they should or should not be involved in, but the vast majority of the American people are disgusted, dissatisfied, disenchanted with the federal government. And as the representative said, we believe we can't do anything about it. But we were given this power in Article 5. It was given to us literally 2 days before the end of convention in 1787. Colonel George Mason stood and he addressed the men assembled. This is September 15th, 2 days before the end of convention, and he said, we have a terrible problem. We've given the power to Congress to propose amendments should they deem them necessary, but not to the people acting through the states. And then he asked, are we so naive that we believe that the federal government, that's a tyranny, will ever propose amendments to restrain its own tyranny? I'm guessing they laughed. We don't have video, but we do have Madison's notes. They say, NINCOM. Not one person even commented. There was no debate. It was unanimously put in the Constitution to give you this power. The power to step into the breach, to step into the line of fire, and to stop a runaway federal government. Why you? Well, of everybody they could have given this power to, only you have the power to call a convention, to propose amendments, and then to ratify those amendments, thereby changing the structure of our actual Constitution. Why you, of all people? And the answer, actually, if you think about it, is obvious, because the founders were you. Most of them sat in legislatures in the states. They sat on city councils. They understood and believed in government close to the people. So when they said, we have to have a protector for our country, ultimately they looked to you, because that's what they understood. That's where they understood that the preservation of liberty would come from you. So they gave you this power, and now the question is, do we exercise that power? 245 years later, we've never done so. Why haven't we done so? It's hard. The founders intended it to be really hard. They wanted a really high bar. It takes 2/3 of states just to call a convention. Both houses of the legislature agree. You know how hard it is just to get a legislature to agree inside itself. Now you need 2/3 of all state legislatures to agree on the subject matter for a convention. We've never done it. In convention, what happens? You'll choose your own delegates. You'll send your delegates to that convention, and you'll empower them to do certain things. You'll tell them there are certain things they can't do, and they'll get there, and they will convene like a legislature, and they will debate, and they will argue. And they will have to come to a majority to do one thing and one thing only. And this is important. I hear about the runaway convention all the time. The convention is so powerful. It can do so much damage. It can destroy our Constitution. The convention itself has the power to suggest. Nothing else. I've never gone to a meeting and thought, you know, people, like, this is an interim hearing, there'll be suggestions made. It's terrifying. People will make suggestions. There's nothing that can happen in a convention except for suggestions, and then whatever those suggestions are, if we can get a majority of states to agree, those will go out to the states for ratification, and then it takes an even bigger majority. It takes 38 states to ratify anything that comes out of convention. This particular resolution says that the convention will discuss anything that would impose term limits on federal officials. That would mean Congress, which over 85% of Americans want, but it would also mean what we now refer to as the deep state, staffers and bureaucrats, the fourth branch of government that was never supposed to exist. It also potentially means federal judiciary. The convention would discuss anything that would also impose fiscal restraints on the federal government. You heard 30 trillion in debt, but actually really the real number off book is closer to $150 trillion, numbers we cannot even imagine. We could impose generally accepted accounting principles on the federal government. I once sat in a meeting with the OMB and I asked them what accounting principles they had. And they literally, these are senior officials at the OMB, they said, we don't have any principles. I said, I know that, but I was talking about accounting principles. And so they literally don't follow any accounting principles. So we can impose those things. We can impose taxation caps, spending caps. And then finally, and I think most importantly, we can impose caps or restrictions on scope, jurisdiction, and power of the federal government. There are many things the federal government was never intended to be involved in. In fact, the founders agreed, Hamilton and Jefferson in their great debate about big government versus small government, they agreed that anything that you can do, that you as the state legislature have the power to do, the federal government didn't have the power to do, and vice versa. And now, today, you regulate your education system, your environment, your healthcare system, and the federal government does all of those things as well, and that's because the courts have given them that power, not the Constitution. So today we come to you to talk about the idea that you could step into the breach, that you have the power. There's one last thing I'd like to address, then I'd be happy to take questions, that I hear all the time this argument. This is literally the only argument I hear against the idea of the state stepping in and calling a convention of states. Mark, it's going to be a runaway convention. You have no idea what's going to happen. We're going to throw it open. The whole Constitution is at risk. And I'm going to tell you straight up, unequivocally, that is false. How do I know it's false? I'm not the smartest guy in the world. Every single nationally known conservative commentator that's commented on this, 100% of them, Levin, Hannity, Shapiro, all of these guys, Glenn Beck, all of these guys say not possible. All the conservative legal scholars in the country that are nationally known, Randy Barnett at Georgetown, at Princeton, Robbie George, all of them say it cannot run away. It's limited by what we limit them to. And in the end, and this is the most important thing, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, I am a lawyer, don't hold that against me, we're not very good at math, but I can do this math. It takes 38 states to ratify anything that comes out of convention. And I want to challenge anybody who is concerned about this, and you can call me directly, I'm happy to give you my phone number and my card, tell me what amendment you're afraid of, and then tell me the 38 states that will ratify it. I've made that offer to millions of people. I've never gotten an email or a phone call. It cannot run away. That's a fallacy created to stop us from using the Constitution to save the Constitution. Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm here live in Philadelphia at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. When you hear the phrase lives, fortunes, and sacred honor, these are the folks we should think of, those who anonymously gave their lives. Well, today you have a chance to volunteer. You need to volunteer for conventionofstates.com, the movement that's going to save the country. These folks are willing to step up and give everything. We need you to give just a little bit. Go to conventionofstates.com and volunteer today.